I'd like to do something a little bit different today. Usually, I will somewhat laser focus on one very specific topic and dive into that. Today, what I'd like to do is share with you just some of my thoughts, just kind of freestyle stream of consciousness on just a couple of topics that have been on my mind here lately. The first one is, after having some conversations with some people that I talk to just about every day, one of the things that's been on my mind is the issue of becoming an expat permanently, living abroad. Now, listening to Philippines expat channels, or even for channels that cover Thailand and Vietnam and whatnot, or there's other channels that talk about living abroad in Colombia and other places, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. It's easy to get the idea that there are masses upon masses of men who are moving abroad. And number-wise, there are tens of thousands, millions of men who are doing this. But percentage-wise, very few of them say to themselves, I'm going to live in another country in Southeast Asia and then actually do it. And so I've been giving some thought to that. And what I've come to is that it's really not the life for everyone. I know it's easy to get the idea that if you move overseas and you lower your cost of living and you have a much better dating atmosphere, you're in balmy tropical weather and there's always something to do. I know it's easy to get the idea that this has to be the best option for any man looking for a new chapter in his life. And for many, it is. For myself, I count it as one of the best decisions I've made in the last 20 years. I can't even imagine, had I not moved to the Philippines back in 2012, all the adventures I would have missed out on if I had decided to simply stay in California. But that being said, I'll say it again that the Philippines, or even life abroad as an expat, is not for everybody. In fact, for some guys, it provides the very conditions that will ruin them. And it may ruin them because financially they just can't hold it together and they end up homeless and bankrupt. For other guys, they really can't handle the availability of women on a daily basis, and they end up ruining their lives, whether it's with unplanned pregnancies or STDs or romantic drama that turns into violence. Some guys ruin their life that way by becoming an expat. So it's just really not for everyone. This last week, it's just really been impressed upon me that it's just not for everybody. One of the other things that's kind of been on my mind here lately is the whole concept of marriage. I was reminded of some thoughts that I had way back when I was like 11, 12 years old. And at that time, I had zero interest in having a girlfriend, but I was observant. And as I looked around, of course, I noticed, well, gee, in society, there's all these people that are married. Even the animals seek out a mate. They pair up. The birds and the dogs and everything. And I remember thinking at that age, why? Why do they do this? Nobody told the animals, hey, go out and find somebody of the opposite sex of your species and pair up. And yet there's this innate drive, this desire in humans to be married or to have long-term companionship. I'll never forget 1 year, this was when I was still about 20, maybe 22 years old, more like 22. And what I would do is go around as the supervisor very late at night, from like 10 p.m. till about 3 in the morning. And I would drive all over the county to all these banks. I would visit about anywhere from, 7 some night to up to 11 banks scattered throughout the different cities. And so I spent a lot of time out on the road late at night. And I remember going down this one kind of lonely road between cities in the rural area, and I saw this rabbit that had been hit by a car. And it must have been hit like maybe 10 minutes before I got there. And it was kind of sad because this rabbit, which had been hit mortally, it was just gone. It was dead. You could just tell. There was the other rabbit I don't know if it was the male or the female, but there was the other rabbit. And there was like no traffic on this road, very little. I mean, maybe a car passed by every 20 minutes. And so you had this dead rabbit, and then the mate was right there, like trying to figure out what's going on. Why isn't this rabbit moving? Or maybe it knew, who knows? But it was there, concerned. So I kept going. I went to the next city, and on the way back, I took the same road. And now both of the rabbits were dead. Somebody had hit the second rabbit. And I thought to myself, wow, aside from being incredibly sad, this again brings up the question, why is it such a desire to have a mate and to be so invested and emotionally attached, even this rabbit, that it would not leave the side of its mate, even though it led to its own death? So that always stuck with me. And over the years, having gone through 2 divorces, when I came to the Philippines and found myself single, I thought to myself, do I really want to get married? It hadn't worked out the first 2 times. And I thought to myself, well, I'll just be open to the idea of marriage, but I'm not really going to pursue it. I kind of burned myself out of that in my 30s. In my 30s, I was bound and determined to get married as quick as possible because it just seemed like a burning desire. But by the time I'd spent a few years in the Philippines, my mindset was, well, I'm open to the idea for the right person, but I think I'm just going to kind of be here and there for a while. Nothing committal. And so that's how life went along for a good 5-6 years until I met who is now my wife. And at that time, I was living in Vietnam. I was at a point of bliss. Like you hear about the Hindus and the Buddhists, and they talk about reaching this point of enlightenment. It was kind of like I had reached that in Vietnam. I had started to learn about Taoism, and even though I was dating here and there, and I had a relationship in Vietnam and such, I'd gotten to the point where I woke up every day and I was 100% satisfied on every level. Spiritually, emotionally, financially, socially, I was just content and happy, and my cup was running over, and every day was a joy. And I really didn't care if I found somebody to marry or not. I was just happy to be every day. I went to Davao for a visa run and met my wife. We got to spend one day together. I mean, of course, she wasn't my wife at the time, but we kept in touch. I was highly impressed with her, enough so that I left Vietnam, moved back to the Philippines, and we began our relationship, and we've been together ever since. At this point, that was more than 5.5 years ago. I'm happily married. I enjoy it, and it's wonderful. But I still find myself pondering this question. In fact, I just looked out the window right now. There's these 2 blackbirds with like this bright red chest. It's a pair. I've seen them for 2 years now, and they build a nest in the same palm tree. And now they're building their nest for this year. Anyways, kind of ironic that happened. Because it would be easy to think, well, marriage has finally worked out for me. It's made my life so joyful and content and happy in a different way than it was when I was single living in Vietnam. And it would be easy to think, oh, well, this is the answer for everybody. Everybody should come to Southeast Asia and marry a Filipina. And that's the message that you get from some vloggers, I won't say all, but some, is come to the Philippines, meet a great Filipina, get married, it'll all be wonderful. Well, that's just not true. I know I've talked to so many guys over the years who have done consultations with me that I've talked to, become friends with, and it did not end happily ever after. Some of them, it ended very badly, emotionally and financially for the guy. So then what can we make of all this? Well, similar to being an expat, I would say that marriage is great for some people. If you're equipped enough, mature enough to foster and create and maintain a healthy relationship where you have good communication, good problem resolution, lots of forgiveness, lots of grace and joy and happiness and love and affection. If you and your partner are both equipped that way, marriage is just awesome. But if one of you or both of you lacks those skills and isn't interested in becoming a more patient, gracious person, marriage is not a good idea. Better to just stay single. Life is a lot less complicated that way. So the conclusion I come to is single life permanently is awesome for some people. Marriage is awesome for some people. But I think the danger is based on our experiences thinking, well, since staying single is good for me, that's the answer for everybody. And I'm going to tell everybody I meet, never get married, stay single. And I've seen comments like this. And the same is true with trying to tell everybody, come to the Philippines and just find a good Filipina and get married and you'll be happy. Well, that's not true either. So I guess when you really look at it all, it comes back to something I've said to so many people. It's your responsibility to find your own path. What's good for me is not necessarily good for you. You need to take a good, honest look at yourself. Like Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations. You have to honestly look at yourself and say, is marriage really what I should be doing? Am I doing it just because society says you should be married? Where's your wife? Why are you still single? Are you doing it for that reason? Or are you doing it because you really, truly want to build a healthy relationship? Or are you doing it just because, and I'm sure we've all seen this happen, some guys get married because they basically want a live-in maid and sex partner. They don't really want a relationship. They just want their needs met, which really, if you want to be honest about it, that's just a purely selfish reason for getting married. They don't care what the other person gets out of it. So I guess whether it comes to becoming a full-time expat or deciding to stay single or married the rest of your life, it would be nice if I could just tell you, do this and you'll be happy. Well, life doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. You have to put some mental energy in it. You got to evaluate yourself honestly, and you have to find your own path. And the guys that are too lazy to do that, they're going to stumble forward and go, well, we'll just see what happens. Next thing you know, they think they're in love with a bar girl and they're moving her into his place, and it all goes bad from there. So live your life proactively. Live it with volition. Live it because you put some forethought into what you want your future to look like, and then align your decisions to that. Forget about what's good or right for other people. You need to put in the work to plan out and find and walk the path that's best for you.